Colleagues, the second order of the day is consideration of report of the Committee on Appropriations Bill for an Act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation the total sum of 6,677,358,227 naira only, of which 351,370,000,000 naira only is for statutory transfers. 1,475,320,000,000 naira only is for debt services. 2,646,389,236,196 naira only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 1,587,598,122,031 naira only is for contribution to the Development Fund for Capital Expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2016. Honorable members will recall that the report was laid on Tuesday, 22nd March 2016. Now I invite Honorable Abdulmuni Jibrin to move for the consideration of the report.
Of Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I hereby move that the House do consider the bill for an act to authorize from the consolidated do consider the bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation the sum of 6,677,358,225 naira only, of which 351,370,000,000 naira only is for statutory transfers. 1,475,320,000,000 naira only is for debt service. 2,646,389,230,196 naira only for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 1,587,598,122,031 naira is for contribution to the Development Fund for Capital Expenditure for the year ending 31st December 2016. I so move.
I rise to second the motion as moved by the Chairman House Committee on Appropriation, Hon Jibrin. I so second.
Hence it's a nay. Ayes have it. Leader is now invited to move that the House do resolve into Committee of Supply to consider the report.
House, those are referred to the Committee on Supply for the consideration of the Appropriation Bill. Thank you.
Motion moved by the leader.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. House do resolve into Committee of Supply.
The 22nd December 2015, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, laid before a joint sitting of the National Assembly the 2016 Appropriation Bill containing the estimates of revenue and expenditure of the Federation for the 2016 fiscal year in aggregate sum of 6,77,680,000,000 naira only, of which 351,370,000,000 naira only is for statutory transfers, 1,475,320,000,000 naira only is for debt service. 2,348,600,000,000 naira only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 1,845,540,000,000 naira, inclusive of 150,150,000,000 naira capital expenditure in statutory transfers, and 86 billion naira as interest on capitalized loans is for contribution to the Development Fund for Capital Expenditure for the year ending 31st December 2016. The House debated the general principle of the bill on Wednesday 20th January, Thursday 21st January, and Tuesday 26th January 2016 respectively. The bill was read the second time on 26 January 2016 and consequently referred to the Committee on Appropriation for further legislative action. Thereafter, the committee developed a work plan in consultation with the House leadership and the leadership of the standing committees to advance work on the bill. Subsequently, work at the level of the various subcommittees and the committees on appropriation held between 28 January 2016 and 26 February 2016. In the course of the work of the committee, a joint meeting of the House and Senate Committees on Appropriation was held in an interactive session with the Honorable Minister of Budget and National Planning, Honorable Minister of Finance, Governor of Central Bank, Accountant General of the Federation, and the Director General Budget Office of the Federation. The meeting helped in clarifying gray areas of the budget. Revenue assumption. In preparing details of the 2016 bill, the committee adopted a benchmark price of $38 per barrel on crude oil, based on the recommendation of the House on the medium-term expenditure and fiscal strategy paper. The executive proposal of crude oil production of 2.2 million barrels per day and an exchange rate of $197 naira to a dollar were also adopted. Highlights. After due consideration of submission by subcommittees and interaction with relevant stakeholders, the highlight of the bill as recommended by this committee as follows. Aggregate expenditure, 6,060,677,358,227 trillion. Statutory transfer, 351,370,000,000 billion. Debt servicing, 1.475.320.000.000 trillion. Recurrent expenditure 2.646,389,236.196 trillion. Capital expenditure 1.587,598,122.031 trillion. Nominal deficit, that's the budget deficit, 2.204,936,925.711.16 trillion. And the ratio of deficit to GDP is 2.114%. Observations. The 2016 appropriation bill, which is the first by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, was not presented on time to the National Assembly. This subsequently affected the timely passage of the bill. 2. The 2016 appropriation bill, after its presentation to the National Assembly, was seen to be fraught with some inconsistencies from MDAs, given the subsequent reference by them to different versions of the budget. This was also noticed at the level of subcommittees. This is strange and goes against proper budgetary procedures and processes with attendant consequences, attendant implication. 3. The available revenue for appropriation is grossly inadequate to meet the huge demand of MDAs to prosecute needed programs for national development across all spheres in the economy. 4. The 2016 bill seeks to stimulate the economy, but the recurrent expenditure as compared to the capital component at a ratio of 70 to 30 is still very high. This takes away from the infrastructure stimulus funding that the country so desperately needs for development. 5. The 2016 appropriation bill contained a number of omissions, including the area of personnel cost. Though the appropriation committee has filled some of the gaps, there are many outstanding cases which could raise serious concern in the course of the year. Recommendation. 1. Subsequent budgets should be submitted in strict compliance with the provision of the Fiscal Responsibility Act to enable the National Assembly conduct proper engagement to conclude the budget process in good time. 2, there should be proper engagement in future between the Budget Office of the Federation and the MDAs on budget content in order to avoid what appears to be a disconnect between them in the process of budget proposals. This will also ensure that the budget proposal between the two parties is in harmony. 3, government must endeavor to increase and diversify its revenue generation stream, given the earning gap between collectible revenue and actual collections. 4, recurrent expenditure related to capital expenditure should be driven down. Such a ratio in favor of an increased capital expenditure profile will ensure that the capital thrust of the budget is delivered to the Nigerian people. And 5, from the 2017 fiscal year, government should endeavor to show up capital expenditure by substantially reducing recurrent expenditure. This is the only way to free up resources for critical infrastructure towards economic growth and development. Prayer. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, as due consideration has been given to the preparation of the 2016 Appropriation Bill, the committee hereby recommends that the House should consider and approve the bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation the total sum of 6,60,677,358,277 naira only, of which 351,370,000,000 naira only is for statutory transfers. 1,475,320,000,000 naira only is for debt service. 2,646,389,236,196 naira only for the current non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 1,587,598,122,031 naira only is for contribution to development fund for capital expenditure for the 2016 fiscal year. Conclusion. In view of the revenue and general economic challenges confronting the nation, the committee has, in a landmark decision, not witnessed since the advent of present democratic dispensation in 1999, reduced the size of the aggregate expenditure and consequently reduced the total recurrent deficit and borrowing. The committee also wishes to thank the leadership and honorable members of the House for the support given to it in the course of this work. We also thank the appropriation subcommittees for their cooperation in bringing this assignment to a successful end.
Matters transfers. National Judicial Council. I hit the gavel. National Assembly, 115 billion. Carried. 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 Public Complaints Commission, 2 billion. Carried. INEC, 45 billion. Carried. National Human Rights Commission, 1,210,000,000. Total statutory transfers, 351,370,000,000 naira. Carried. Part B, debt service. Domestic debts, 1,307,400,000,000 naira. Carried. Foreign debts, 51,480,000,000 naira. Carried. Total 1,361,880,000,000. Carried. Sinking fund. In case you are wondering what sinking funds are, these are sinking funds. They are funds we are going to sink in order to retire maturing loans. It's 113,440,000,000. Carried. Debt services, subtotal, and total for debt services, 1,475,320,000,000. Carried. Recurrent non-debt expenditure, ministry, department, agency, executive, Auditor General for the Federation, 2,480,584,709 naira. Carried. Budget and National Planning, 7,737,100,536 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Agriculture, 29,632,584,416 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Defense, 302,213,355,618 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Education, 367,734,727,223 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Environment, 14,515,408,468 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Finance, 9,994,990,976 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 39,440,096,249 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Health, 221,412,548,087 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, 10,410,294,458 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, 38,729,448,46,000. Ministry of Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, 38,729,446,483 naira. Federal Ministry of Interior, 451,942,552,070 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Justice, 17,389,782,636 naira. Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, 7,735,604,366 naira. Federal Ministry of Solid Minerals Development, 9,402,106,704 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Niger Delta, 1,970,127,331 naira. Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, 54,336,926,926.
Ask them, sir.
Carried. Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, 25,554,038,310 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Special Duties, SGF, 65,604,713 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Transport, 13,667,122,591 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Water Resources, 7,209,056,441 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, 1,261,723,837 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Works, Power and Housing, 33,971,000 882,707 naira. Carried. Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development, 72,297,326,595. Carried. Oh, I see why Honorable Goni and Princess are excited. Wow. Fiscal Responsibility Commission, 320,198,366 naira. Carried. Independent Corrupt Practices and Related Offences Commission, 5,029,989,359. Carried. Infrastructure Concessionary. Is it concessionary or concessioning?
Concessionary, sir.
Infrastructure Concessionary Regulatory Commission, 838,569,623 naira. Carried. Ministry of Communication Technology, 9,885,909,120 naira. Carried. National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission, 625,819,403 naira. Carried. National Security Advisor, 56,791,291,063 naira. Carried. Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, 6,270,657,023 naira. Carried. Presidency, 21,676,277,888 naira. Carried. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, 45,890,745,817 naira. Carried. Carried. The subtotal for the executive is 1,888,444,450,116 naira. Carried. Federal Executive Bodies, Code of Conduct Bureau, 2,036,983,075 naira. Carried. Code of Conduct Tribunal, 551,873,810 naira. Carried. Federal Character Commission, 2,064,672,500 naira. Carried. Federal Civil Service Commission, 992,548,019 naira. Carried. National Population Commission, 4,911,777,812 naira. Carried. Police Service Commission, 676,965,000 naira. Carried. Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, 2,044,284,712 naira. Carried. Total, subtotal Federal Executive Bodies, 13,279,104,928 naira. Carried. Service-wide votes and pensions, expenditure items, total allocation. Office of the Head of the Civil Service, civilian pension is.
Total allocation first. Let's total
later. I will say the total later. Okay. The total is at the top.
Except we want to go details first.
Let's carry the total so that we don't forget it. Total allocation is 188 billion, 105 million, 681,152. Leader has a point of order?
Yeah.
On pensions.
On the pensions. Now, at the end of the day, it is every single member here that is going to be bogged down with phone calls from their constituents that I need my pension paid, and we don't know where that will end. Pension is like salary to those who have retired. I believe the total amount for personnel in pensions came to about 91 billion. But what we have in the details here is about 50 billion. So there's a big shortfall. And we have to be very careful how we treat our retirees and our pensioners and those who depend on us for their salaries and livelihood. Pensions is very, very important. And I don't think we should shortchange those people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
They said they do not have money to fund it. And in any case, just a point of a correction, it is not the head of service pension that he's talking about. It is the payment into redemption fund where you will see 50 billion. The total, and completely checked by the executive themselves, it's 90 billion, 195,808,918. So they took off 40 billion. So maybe during the course of the year, they will find a way to resolve that issue. It's important that we put it on record that there's a shortfall of 40 billion, and we presented it to them, drew their attention to it, and they say they don't have money.